Hi, and welcome to another episode of Surrendered Birth Stories. Birth stories, birth education, and the pursuit of surrendering it all to God. Let's get started. Well, hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. I hope your week is off to a great start. And if not, hopefully these stories will help make it better. Today you'll get to hear from my sweet friend Lauren, and she has 4 beautiful birth stories to share. Each story is unique in its own way, and lessons were definitely learned from one to the next. And also, actually, many of them reminded me a lot of my own birth stories in different ways. But I also have 4 kids, so I just saw some similarities along the way. But I hope you can take some time today, whether you're doing the dishes or laundry, taking a shower, maybe driving in the car, but wherever you are listening to this, I hope you enjoy hearing these precious moments of surrender as Lauren shares her stories. Well, welcome to the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast. Today, I have Lauren with me. I'm so excited that she's here. She is going to be sharing all 4 of her birth stories. So why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me. So my name's Lauren. I am a mama of 4 living in the Triad of North Carolina. I also sort of used to be a birth photographer and doula. I do it here and there. But right now I'm focusing on motherhood and raising my babies.
Awesome. Well, why don't we get started by talking about your very first pregnancy?
Okay. I don't know where to start. So
How about finding out when you got pregnant? How did that go?
Sure, yes. Okay, so we had really just gotten married. It was less than a year after we got married, and my nephew was born, and I was like, I want one of those. And so we decided we'll start trying, and we started trying, and then a little bit later, a couple of weeks later, we were like, well, maybe we'll wait. Maybe we'll wait another year and we'll see. And then about a week later, I got a positive test. But it's funny, I'm such a planner. We were already scheduling hospital tours. And so the night I took the test, I was going to pick my husband up from work to go to a hospital tour. And so it was kind of this funny, like, we're pregnant and now we're touring a hospital. And I don't know, it was just like a funny, crazy night and like a whirlwind. But yeah, so we had decided to have a hospital birth at the time. And in my mind, it made sense to choose the hospital and then choose the provider. I don't know that I would do that now anymore, but first time mom, that was my thought process, was like, let me choose the best hospital and then we'll find a provider. So we were touring the hospitals, and then I had my best friend said, hang on, you need to watch The Business of Being Born. And that planted the seed, and I went down the rabbit hole, and we completely shifted our plans, and we found a birth center near us that we decided to go to. And that was great. I loved it. We lived in Cary at the time.
Okay.
And so we went to Baby & Co. Birth Center, and I loved it. The prenatal care was amazing. I loved the midwives. I just loved that model of care, longer appointments, just more personalized. It was great. Should I go ahead and get into the birth story?
Are there any other pregnancy details you want to share? Like, how did your pregnancy go for like a first? Was there any complications, or was it really smooth? Did you get sick? How was it?
It was pretty smooth. I was nauseous at the beginning, like first trimester, pretty standard. But really it was smooth. I worked part-time all throughout my pregnancy. Looking back, I was very swollen. But other than that, I honestly had a really great pregnancy. We did not find out the sex of the baby, and so that was going to be a surprise for us, which was really exciting, and also drove our families crazy. Which was, kind of extra fun. But yeah, it was pretty straightforward pregnancy, thankfully. So,
Well, yeah, you can jump into the birth story. How did labor start? When did labor start?
okay, yes. So, my due date came and went. um, and as much as, even if you know everything and you hear all the things that say a due date is just a guess date and all of that, you still get the date stuck in your head.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm, an emotional wreck. Um, I'm seeing friends of mine having their babies early, and, I just feel like I'm going to be pregnant forever. But we get to, what was it, 40 and 5 days? And I had no signs of labor, maybe some extra Braxton Hicks, but like nothing really. And at 40 and 5, I lost my mucus plug. That was the first sign. And that was in the afternoon, like late afternoon. And of course, I'm texting my husband. I'm, telling my best friend and just letting everybody know, like, oh my goodness, it's happening. Um, and it was. And so 30 minutes later, I started having contractions and they kind of just started to get more and more regular. My mom was staying with us that night, which was kind of fun. We got takeout and we watched Friends and like had this really sweet, like early labor time with me and my husband and my mom. Um, and things were just kind of slowly moving along, nothing unbearable. Um, I think it was maybe around 10 o'clock. So we're looking at like 6 or 7 hours into labor is when things started to get a little bit closer together, a little stronger. So I call the midwife and they tell me to drink a glass of wine and take a Benadryl
and
go to sleep. Exactly. Of course, me as a first time mom, way too excited for any of that. And I'm also like, I don't want to take a Benadryl, then I'll be drowsy during labor, so I completely disregard everything the midwife says. And I can't sleep. When I lay down, it's more painful. So I get in the tub, I try to eat a snack, like I'm just kind of moving around. And just kind of do that for another few hours. I think we ended up leaving the house around like 3 a.m. So that's like 12 hours into labor at that point. And we decide, okay, this is like, I have to stop during contractions. I can't walk through them, all those signs. So we're like, we're going to go to the birth center, which was like 45 minutes away. So that was a rough car ride.
Oh, yeah.
Probably the hardest part of labor for me. And we get to the birth center middle of the night and I'm only 2 centimeters. So that was a big bummer. So deflated. But they told me I can stay and try to progress. They're not going to send me home. They were very sweet. They said, you can stay, walk around, do some lunges, see if we can get things moving. And so that's what we did. So another few hours, I had progressed to about a 4. And so they're like, great, we're going to admit you. Got in my little room, got in the shower. I was loving like sitting on the ball in the shower. And then my husband had like a second like handheld shower on my belly while the other shower had hit my back. It was actually so amazing. I don't even know how long I was in there. It was like time stopped. It was the best. I tried the tub, didn't love it, got out. I was group B strep positive, and so I had to get the antibiotics, or I opted to get the antibiotics. And I was and sort of still am very afraid of needles. So at the time, that was like a big deal for me. I actually ended up asking for the nitrous oxide for that part of labor for them to put the IV in. So and I'm actually glad I did because it took them quite a few tries to get it in. So that was rough, but we got through it. We got my first dose of antibiotics and we were just kind of chugging along. I had a friend come be my doula, and so she was there with us. And then I had my whole family in the waiting room, as all the best first-time moms do. They're all waiting in the living room, and then it's me and my husband and my doula friend. We get close to about the 12-hour at the birth center mark. So we're looking at like 24 hours into labor at this point. And I had been at a 5 for a handful of hours. So I I'd progressed to 5 centimeters and I just wasn't getting past that. I think they broke my water to try and help, but I was just kind of stuck at a 5. So we're trying all the things, walking, lunging. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember all the things we tried, but it just wasn't getting me anywhere. So my midwife comes in and very sweetly sits me down and says, let's just look at our options. Let's talk about what you're thinking, because I'm exhausted. I'm like begging her for, like a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I'm like, what do I do? And she says, you can stay here and keep going, or you can go to the hospital and get an epidural. Those are kind of the 2 options at this point. And so we chose to go to the hospital. And I can touch on this more later, but I actually struggled with that decision a lot because I wasn't at the point where it was like the pain was unbearable and I was like begging for an epidural or anything, but I was just so exhausted. And I don't know what the pushing stage would have looked like had I not gone and gotten that epidural. So we made the decision. It was really relaxed transfer. We got in our own car. We drove over. It was really close. And our midwife came with us, got us all checked in. At the time, the midwife did not have hospital privileges, so we had to transfer to a whole other practice, which was also just disruptive and kind of scary, and so that was hard. But we got there, we got checked in. I remember it taking what seemed like forever to get the anesthesiologist to come. And for anyone who has chosen to get pain medication, it's like once you make that decision, everything hurts 10 times worse. So I'm like no longer able to cope. Like everything is so much more difficult. I don't know what was going through my husband's head. He was probably like freaking out, but that was really rough. Finally, the anesthesiologist came in. I got my epidural. And I passed out for like hours. I think I was snoring. It was great. So we're there. My whole family moved into the hospital waiting room. My birth photographer had arrived. So she was sort of in and out. And yeah, I mean, I was in the bed at that point. And then it sort of just kind of started that kind of classic cascade of interventions. So epidural, they did the Pitocin. I think they broke my water even more, like it hadn't been fully broken. Yeah. And they found meconium. So that was sort of like red flag for them. And she started telling me like, we might have to take baby to the warmer instead of giving him, well, we didn't know it was a him, but giving baby to you right away. Like, so it looks like, skin to skin might be out. And so I'm just sort of starting to see like all these things that I wanted kind of go out the window as we go. And so, yeah, I mean, that part was pretty boring. I was laying in the bed, just kind of waiting for things to happen. I do remember having a big contraction and like seeing it on the monitor, and I can't feel it at all, but I saw on the monitor that it was a big one. And then I ended up throwing up. And I just remember being like, that is so crazy that I can't feel this, but my body is still reacting in this way. Yeah. I don't know. I just remember that sort of blowing my mind. But we finally made it to 10 centimeters. It was about time was 36 hours in. So it was about, I lost my mucus plug at like 3 p.m. And he was born at 3 a.m.
Oh,
the next day. Yeah. Like 36 hours later. Yeah. So we finally get to 10, and actually pushing was quick. So I only pushed for like 45 minutes, which was great. I needed a win after all of that, but yeah, he came quick. I remember thinking that pushing felt so painful, and the nurses were saying, oh, it's just pressure. And it was not just pressure. It was very painful. But the actual pushing felt good. It was like when I stopped pushing, it was the pain. I'm sure it was just the pressure of baby on my pelvic bone, and then me in the bed on my tailbone, like all of that. But anyway, yeah, he was born. He came out perfectly fine. The cord was wrapped around his neck, and the midwife at the hospital cut it before he was even all the way out. So there goes my delayed cord clamping. And then they took him straight to the warmer, even though he was crying. So a lot of the things that I wanted for my birth were kind of taken from me, mainly because we had to transfer to this new practice and this new midwife that we didn't know. She didn't know what we wanted. So that was hard. They took him to the warmer. Someone announced it's a boy. I think maybe my husband. I can't even remember. But, and we knew his name would be Finn if he was a boy. So that was Finn. Yeah, he was at the warmer and they put a diaper on him and a hat on him and all of these things and wiped him totally down before they handed him to me. So I struggled a lot with that for a good year and a half of, disappointment, like beating myself up about getting the epidural and the transfer and all of that. And then just the fact that we lost those precious first few moments, which, maybe some people would say it's just a few minutes, but it felt like such an important thing that I wanted, and we lost that. So that was really hard. But I will say, meeting my child for the first time, and I know that you were going to ask this question, but it brought me back to Jesus. It brought me back to my walk with the Lord. And we had not been in church. I had not been walking with him for years and years. And meeting my child and feeling that love and just thinking, oh my goodness, he loves me even more than that, was like game changer for me. So I would go through it 1,000 more times for all of that and for where it got me. But yeah, so that's my first birth. It was a whirlwind.
Well, that is incredible to hear, especially about your faith being renewed as a result of that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the birth affected your postpartum period at all? How was your postpartum?
Yeah, I do actually. And I don't think it was something that I realized in the moment, but looking back and now having had 3 other postpartum periods and seeing how good it can be, I definitely think I think I maybe even had some postpartum depression. I've actually blocked a lot of it out. I actually don't remember a lot of that really initial like newborn time with my oldest. But I've talked to my husband and even some of our extended family, and they were like, you were just not happy. I was so disappointed in my birth. I had really, really like worked so hard to educate myself and learn all about it. And, to a certain extent, I think I did put it like on this pedestal of like, you have to have this out of hospital, unmedicated birth, water birth, like all these things.
Yeah.
And, I wish I hadn't done that, but that's just where I was. And that, yeah, it just caused a lot of disappointment and a lot of processing. I called my birth photographer and my doula friend like 100 times, like, please talk me through this again. And I even met with my midwives and all of that. But yeah, so that was really hard. And like I said, I didn't know at the time how bad it was. And I think probably that's how it is for a lot of people. You don't realize how bad it is until you're out of it. But yeah.
So how long was it between Finn's birth and when you got pregnant again? And how did you guys plan to get pregnant again, or how did that go?
Yeah, so we were not in any rush. We didn't have like an idea of how spaced out we wanted our kids or anything, but we knew that we just wanted to focus on having one for a while. And then sort of in the middle of that, when he was about 1.5, my husband got a new job that moved us a couple hours away. And he was commuting for like 6 months, and he was like out here during the week and then home on the weekends. And it was just kind of like a hard, crazy time. And we were, buying our house and selling our house and all of that. So babies were nowhere on our mind during that time. And my son was, let's see, he turned 2, and then I found out I was pregnant about a month later. So pretty standard spacing, I would say, but nothing super early or anything. But Uh, yeah, so, and we did plan it. We knew that we were ready at the time. And so thankfully, it didn't take very long and found out we were pregnant with my second.
And then did you decide to go the birth center route again, or did you want to do things differently this time? What did you guys choose for the second time around?
Yeah, so I thought about the birth center thing for sure. We moved to a new area, but there was actually a birth center that was it was the same birth center that we went to the first time. It was the same company. They had more than one location. And so we looked into that and we really considered it. And then there was another birth center close by that we looked at. We did the tours. I think we maybe even scheduled an appointment. But I kept coming back to, like, if I want a different experience, I need to do something different. And so we decided to look into home birth. I had actually looked into home birth with our first and had just decided for the first one, let's not do that. I don't know what it was that made me just feel like not ready for home birth.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the second time I reached back out to that same home birth midwife, and we decided to go with home birth. And so for that, we had to travel to her for all our prenatal appointments. It was like an hour and a half away, which was hard, but it was worth it. We really loved her. She was great. We were really excited to have a home birth.
So she was based back in Cary.
She's in Pittsburgh, I think.
Oh, okay.
So she's a CNM,
Mm-hmm.
and she just does all of her appointments at her office. But she was great, and we really were happy with our care, so it was worth it to us. And then I actually did co-care at the birth center in Statesville.
Natural Beginnings.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Natural Beginnings. And so I went to them for anatomy scan and labs and all those kinds of things. And then if there was something where I risked out of home birth, they were there to sort of be my care providers if that was needed. So that was nice. I really liked having both. I felt really well taken care of. We were super excited. That pregnancy, I had placenta previa, I guess it was technically low-lying placenta.
Mm-hmm.
And so they found that at the anatomy scan. And so I had to have another ultrasound at, I think it was like 28 weeks. And then at that one, they found out it still had not moved enough. And so we were going to have another one. And at the time, I was thinking, I cannot have another ultrasound and not find out the gender of my baby. I can't do it. I'm not that strong-willed. So we ended up finding out with that one that we were having a boy. And that was really exciting. And so we picked out his name, and it was just like a really different experience knowing versus not knowing. So that was really sweet. And then my placenta finally moved at 36 weeks, we found out. It actually moved like way out of the way, so it was big praise. And that's when we ordered our home birth kit and like started actually planning for a home birth because it was real. So, so we got everything ready. And so my first one, like I said, he was born at 41 weeks. So I went into labor at 40 and 5, and then he was born right on the dot at 41 weeks. And so going into this, like getting towards the end of this pregnancy, I'm thinking, okay, we've got plenty of time. It'll be at least a week after my due date, just trying to mentally prepare for that. So when I woke up the day after my due date and started having some Braxton Hicks that were timeable, and then they were kind of getting a little more intense and these things were happening, I was in complete denial because there was no way my baby was going to come this early. I was not prepared. It was snowing that day. And, it's funny. I actually, throughout my whole pregnancy, I think I had looked at the Farmer's Almanac early in my pregnancy, and it had said that March we were going to get snow like later than normal into March.
What year was that?
This was 2018.
Oh, yes. Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We had some snow in March
snow,
a
like
couple
even
times.
in April. Yeah. It was kind of a weird year for North Carolina.
Yeah.
So I remember reading that in the Farmer's Almanac. And so I had in my head this whole time, like, oh my gosh, maybe I'll have this like magical snowy home birth. And lo and behold, that's what happened. So it's snowing that day. My son's preschool called and it was canceled, which at the time I remember kind of being pouty about
Yeah.
because I
Because
really,
that was your alone
it
time.
was my time, right? So my husband, he actually took off work that day to kind of like cheer me up and help out around the house. And yeah, so I'm sitting in the recliner eating breakfast, as you do at 40 plus weeks. And I'm having these Braxton Hicks and I start timing them and they're like coming consistently. And then they're starting to get more intense when I get up. They don't stop when I get up, so I call my midwife and I'm saying, should I lay down? Should I rest? I'm thinking about my first experience where it's like nighttime and they're like,
Right.
drink the wine, take the Benadryl. I'm like, okay, so should I go get back in bed? And she's like, no. This was in the morning. This was, 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, no, just go about your day, ignore them as long as you can,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll kind of just see how it goes. So I'm like,
I'm
okay.
assuming, was this before you became a doula?
Yes. I had photographed several births, though.
Okay.
So at that point, I think I had photographed probably 20, 25 births. So I wasn't a doula yet, but I had seen birth. Yeah.
Okay.
Which definitely comes into play in my labor. I feel like it just helped me a lot to understand the process. So this is my first unmedicated birth. So when I think about it or when I talk about it, it's like it felt like a first birth in some ways because, with Finn's labor, I got to 5 centimeters, but I never got into that transition. I didn't fully feel pushing. Like it's just a different experience. And so I had, some nerves about that and it felt like this whole new thing. So so my contractions are picking up and I'm in touch with my midwife and my husband goes out. I sent him out to the store to get bagels because I had to have bagels for my birth team. That was just stuck in my head. I had to have lots of snacks and things for the birth team. So he went and got bagels. He brought the dog to the kennel. Just like ran some last minute errands and my son went with him. And again, we turned on Friends because that's our little early labor tradition. And yeah, I just remember bouncing on my birth ball and things are kind of just progressing like really like slowly and nicely. And my son's like eating lunch and then he's going up for a nap. And I remember calling my mom and being like, I think things might be starting. And I had to put the phone down for a contraction and like breathe through it. And I'm like, hang on. And I breathe through it and I pick the phone back up and she's like, oh, it sounds like, things are picking up. And she's like, do you think you'll have the baby before Finn wakes up from his nap? Yeah. And I'm like, no, that would be like, there's no way. My first labor was 36 hours long. Like, that's crazy. And she's like, okay, well, we'll see. And I'm like, okay. And so we hang up.
Was she coming for the birth?
She wasn't coming. No, she lives in New England. So she was, I guess she probably came a couple weeks later for that one. But she was just like, maybe it'll be quick, and I'm like, that's crazy. There's no way. It'll be like tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah.
So anyway, my husband gets Finn down for his nap and I kind of go into my little birth space and I turn on my playlist and I'm like on my knees leaning over the birth ball and just kind of swaying and sort of getting into a groove. And I remember I threw up and then my water broke. And I'm like, whoa, like this is it. Like it's happening. And that was one time where like the doula, or not the doula, but the birth photographer in me like came into play and was like, these are good signs. Like things are happening. This is transition or it could be,
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, well, my water broke. I'm throwing up. Like, this is real. So we're trying to kind of like get our birth team there. I have a birth photographer in Raleigh that's coming, and my midwife is an hour and a half away, and like all of these things. Somehow we get everyone there in the snow, too. Everyone's like struggling to get there because of the snow. And, in North Carolina, we don't do well.
We don't drive in the snow.
We don't drive in the snow, yeah. So somehow we get everyone there, and let's see. So I get in the tub. We had an inflatable birth tub. My husband gets it filled up. I remember him telling me I felt like I was like running around like a chicken with his head cut off because there was like so much to do. But I do remember like one of my favorite little moments. I stopped him in the middle of kind of the chaos. This is before anybody's there. And we just looked at each other and I said, "Our Rory is coming," because we knew his name, like I said, and it was just like really sweet. And no one else knew his name but us.
Oh.
And we were just like, Rory's coming, and we both started crying. And it was just this really sweet, like just moment of being really present, because I feel like in labor, it's easy to kind of just get caught up in things and not really be present.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I had done that with my first. I kept my eyes closed and I wasn't present. And so that was something I wanted to do this time. So that was a sweet little moment. But yeah, so then I got in the birth pool, and I remember my husband had run into the other room to do something, and I had needed him there for every contraction to just hold my hand. And he had been in the other room, and a contraction came on, and I had my hand out, and I was like reaching for somebody, and my midwife had just walked in at that moment, and she reached out and grabbed my hand. And was like, she just immediately saw what I needed and just grabbed my hand. And it was just like this sweet moment. So yes, I'm in the tub. The water was amazing. It was like night and day difference. Once I got in that water, I felt like I could cope. Like I was very calm, handling everything. I was starting to like vocalize, and I felt like I was being really, really, really loud, but was later told I was not as loud as I felt like I was being. I remember like trying to be quiet and like physically could not be quiet.
Yeah.
So my midwife checks me, and I was 9, which was like amazing. I remember being like, if I am not, 8, 9, 10 centimeters, like I am walking to the hospital. So I don't think I said that out loud, but in my head I was thinking it. But yeah, it was 9 centimeters, and I could feel like my body starting to bear down. And so we had a little bit of meconium when the water had broken that time. And so my midwife at the time felt more comfortable getting me out of the tub for that, or because of that. And so just so she could just have a little more control, I guess, if baby needed extra help. So I am literally 9, probably getting close to 10 centimeters, trying to climb out of this birth pool. And I remember everyone in the room being like, okay, lift your leg, put your foot here, put your arm here, bend your knee, like literally talking me through how to do this, because I couldn't wrap my mind around doing it. Mm-hmm. But somehow I did. I got on the bed and was just pushing. There was no control. It was just happening. And mind you, this is my first Ring of Fire, my first, this is all still like very new, even though it's my second baby. I do remember pushing, feeling good though. I remember thinking like, okay, I'm doing something now. It's not like happening to me, like I am doing it now. Right. And so that felt really good. And I think I pushed for maybe 10 minutes with him, not very long. And he came out with a head full of blonde hair, which we were not expecting. And he was also a pound bigger than his brother. So that was also really surprising.
How big was Finn?
So Finn was 7 pounds, 12 ounces. And then Rory was 8, 12. Nice. So he was so cute and chunky and blonde. And oh my gosh, his cheeks were like wider than the top of his head. Like he was so, so cute. But yeah, it was like the best moment. I have these photos of me like roaring him out. And then just being like in shock that I did it at home in my guest bedroom. Like it was just wild. And my sister got there soon after. Yeah. And then we just stayed in that bed for days in my robe. I mean, postpartum after a home birth is like the best part of it, arguably for me. I love it. I'm in the bed. I don't move. People brought us meals. So yeah, that was really great. And Finn slept through that whole thing. So he
did sleep through it.
He slept through it. We had our baby during his nap, and he woke up and came downstairs and met his brother, and it was like the sweetest moment. And yeah, we FaceTimed our family, and it was the best. And I was hooked. There was no way I was giving birth anywhere else
after that,
other than home. Yeah, after that. So yeah, it was amazing.
So How long was that labor then?
So that labor was about 8 hours from that
Nice.
first like Braxton Hicks to
So
baby.
a nice like fourth of the
So
last one.
yeah, we cut off a lot of time that time, which I'm very thankful for. But it's funny. It's just crazy how our minds work. But I still, after that labor, I thought I had processed everything from the first one, but after having Rory at home, it's like all these things, all these emotions came back up, and I started being like, oh, well, of course you can have a baby if it only takes 8 hours, but you can't do it if it
Oh,
takes,
yeah.
I was just really, really hard on myself. Um, but I've learned a lot. I learned a lot from Finn's birth. I learned a lot from all of my births, and I feel like I've gotten to the point now where I realize I can take all of that into births with my clients, or even just helping a friend who's pregnant or has anxiety about birth or whatever. I feel like I have a lot of empathy, and so I think it's ended up helping me in the long run. But
And do you feel like your relationship with Jesus was stronger for that second pregnancy and birth than?
I do. Yeah, I definitely do. I remember after Rory was born, the word that kept popping into my head was overcome, because I was overcome with just his grace on all of it, on just the whole pregnancy and the birth and my family, and just how everything just worked out so beautifully. I got a necklace even that says overcome on it, and I still wear it. But yeah, that word just kept popping in my head. I was just so thankful and just so like overwhelmed with just his grace on us and on me and my baby and my family. So
Okay, so then obviously we ended up having a third baby. So how did that happen?
Yes, we did. Let's see. Okay, yes. My husband and I were planning what we were calling our baby vacation.
I love that.
So we had this vacation planned. We were going to New York City. This was right before the world shut down. This was December of 2019. So we had this trip planned. We were leaving on a Thursday. And on Monday, I found out that I was pregnant. Already pregnant. So it turned into a baby moon.
Yeah. A very early baby moon.
Very early baby moon, yes. But we were shocked but excited. And yeah, I was very nauseous and tired during that trip, but it was still a great trip. But yeah, so he was a little bit of a surprise, but we knew we wanted more, so it was a welcome surprise.
Yeah.
And yeah, we decided to do a home birth again. We actually hired a different midwife. So this is a midwife that I had gotten to know through my work and through some friends, and she was also the assistant at Rory's birth.
Oh, cool.
So we had
So you had met her
she had
before.
been there, yeah, and we had met and everything. So we went with her, and we were really excited. She lived very close, and she would come to us for our appointments, which was amazing. It's like the best thing ever. Yeah, let me think. So I had another low-lying placenta with that pregnancy, but it moved out of the way earlier. So that was good. We did the co-care with the birth center again. And they were great. We love them there. And yeah, that pregnancy was straightforward, other than I was due in the middle of August, and I was very hot and swollen and sweaty and all of that. So yeah, I don't think I have much to tell about that pregnancy. We did remodel our kitchen during that pregnancy, and they finished when I was 39 weeks pregnant. So that was fun. Worth it, but a little stressful. But yeah, anyway, so I can just go straight into that birth story. Yeah, so again, due date came and went. 41 weeks came and went. And like I said, I'm going to the birth center for co-care during this pregnancy. And so at 41 weeks, they start doing non-stress tests. And so I would go drive out like 45 minutes for these non-stress tests every 3 days, just to check on baby. And at the time, that felt good for me. I was not annoyed by it or anything. It felt like gave
Mhm.
me some peace, like, and I didn't have to worry, even though
So they were just
labor wasn't starting.
monitoring baby's heart rate
Yeah.
and if you were having any contractions.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So I would just go get hooked up to the monitor for like 20 minutes. And every time we went, everything looked good. My blood pressure was getting a little high, but nothing concerning.
Mhm.
And that's, pretty normal for 41 plus weeks. So we just kept chugging. And they ended up telling me at 42 weeks what the birth center wanted me to do was come in and get a Foley bulb put in, and then they will send me home. That's sort of their way of trying to get labor started so that they don't have to transfer care to the hospital. Because they're bound by laws here in North Carolina as nurse midwives.
So did you make it to 42 weeks, or were they just telling you that's what they were going to do at 42 weeks?
So they were telling me that's what they wanted to do. So 42 weeks was a Friday. And so I talked to my home birth midwife, and she and I made the plan to try a membrane sweep and castor oil ahead of that date to try and get things going before we got to that 42-week mark.
Yeah.
So we had the plan for Tuesday to try that. And I called her Monday night and I said, I really don't think I can do this. I really don't want to do it. It doesn't feel right. Like, let's just wait. And so she's like, okay, we'll wait till Thursday. We'll give you a couple days, see what we can get going. And then if nothing happens, we'll do that Thursday morning. So that was the plan. She was like, you get a good night's rest. I'll come in the morning and we'll do it. And so, of course, nothing happens. We get to Thursday.
So she gives you the sweep and you took castor oil and nothing happened?
No. So nothing happened leading up to that Thursday that day.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
And then she comes over early, like 8 a.m., and we do the membrane sweep and the castor oil. She says that she has seen better results when you do both together versus just one or the other. So that's what we do. It was disgusting. I don't know if you've ever drank castor oil, but it was not good.
I've tried it once or twice.
Yeah, it was not good. It actually made me really nauseous, and I had to lay down. And yeah.
Did you drink it straight, or did you do a mixture of something?
I did the cocktail, the
with
mixture.
The almond butter.
Almond butter. What else was even in it? I don't remember.
It was lemon verbena nectar. Tea. Oh, the apricot
juice nectar. Yeah. It was apricot or peach or something. Yeah, it was just thick and just not good. So I laid down, wasn't feeling well, but maybe things were starting, but it's hard to tell because you can get crampy from a membrane sweep.
Right.
Castor oil can cause other things to start happening. And so I was just sort of questioning, I don't know if this is it or not. We decided to go on a walk. So we went over to this little waterfall by my house. We went for a walk, and things are kind of starting to happen, but still kind of spaced out and really mild. But I sort of alerted all my people that were coming. My best friend was coming, and then of course the midwife and the birth photographer. And so everyone is sort of aware, but things aren't really picking up quite yet. So we head home, eat lunch. I think I got in the tub for a little bit, and nothing really changed. Sometimes the tub will slow things down or pick things up, and it kind of gives you a sign of is this real or not? But nothing was really changing, and so I'm all right, well, I'm going to go try and just lay down and take a nap. So my husband, again, is putting my older boy down for his nap, my middle son at the time, and I go lay down in my bed. And my midwife told me to do the side lying position, where
with
you lift your
legs.
The pillow, you lift your leg up really high and kind of lean on your belly. And so I lay down. I remember I took my glasses off and I laid down. And as soon as I lifted my leg up, I swear it was baby moved into position, and it was 100 miles an hour, 0 to 100 in that quickly. And I'm vocalizing and moaning, and my husband hears me across the house and is oh my goodness, this is happening, and no one's on the way. And thankfully everyone lives pretty close, but no one's on the way. So he comes in and he takes my phone from me. I had been in the middle of a text to my midwife saying, I think we have some time. I'm going to lay down. I didn't send it, but I was writing it and he saw the text and was like, no.
No.
Like delete. Let me send a new text. So he like alerts everybody and everyone's like on the way. And so I'm upstairs in my room, but our space that we had set up for birth was downstairs. So I remember being like, okay, I got to rush down these stairs before I have another contraction. So I hop out of bed and I'm like basically running down the stairs like as safely as possible, but also I need to get down there. And I make it to the bathroom and I remember the counter being cool and like feeling so good. So I'm like leaning on the counter, putting my head and my arms on the counter. And I say to my husband, go get my pretty bra. I need my pretty bra.
For the pictures.
For the pictures, of course. I need my pretty bra. And he's like, okay. So he's like filling up the birth pool, getting my bra, all the things. And my midwife gets there. I'm standing, leaning over the counter. And I'm still just like in denial of like, okay, this is really, really, really intense, but like there's no way this baby's coming soon. Like we've got hours.
Was your water still intact?
My water was still intact. And so she comes in, she like kneels down and kind of looks to see what's happening. And she says, Lauren, do you want to have a baby in the bathroom or do you want to go in the bedroom? And I was like, what? Oh my gosh. So she helps me, everybody helps me get into the bedroom and I'm standing leaning on the bed now. And I love the way she does this. Like she still gives you the decision, but she poses a question, to kind of
like when we talk to
you
toddlers.
in a direction. Exactly, which is what I needed.
Would you like to walk up the stairs or me carry you up the stairs?
Right, pretty much, yes. She's like, Lauren, do you want to have a baby standing up or do you want to sit where you'll have a little more control? Because she knew I wanted to catch my baby. That was one of my things that I really wanted to do this time. Meanwhile, the birth pool is nowhere near being filled, which, made me very sad, but it just wasn't happening. And so I'm like, I don't know if I can get into this bed. I don't see how I could possibly do that. And she's like, you can if you want to, but I'm giving you this option, And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And so they kind of help me. And I'm sort of like leaning back on the bed, but kind of sitting up. And my birth photographer is not there yet. And I remember being like, someone needs to get photos and video. And so her assistant grabs my phone and like puts it on portrait mode and is like she actually took some really beautiful photos and video. I'm very thankful for that. But it was like, it was happening and I don't even know, just a few minutes of pushing, he came out and it was so cool because with my first home birth, I was sort of side lying on the bed, so I couldn't really see what was happening. And I had my eyes closed and I was just sort of along for the ride. But this time my midwife really calmed me down to the point where I was breathing him out. My eyes were open, which was another thing I really wanted. And I saw him coming out. We didn't know if it was a boy or a girl again. Forgot to mention that. Another surprise. And so I see him coming out. I see him do the rotation, like the whole thing. The cord was around his neck, but she just calmly removed it. And then I reached down and picked him up and brought him to my chest. And my husband and I just start dying laughing because, of course, it's another boy. It was so funny. And I have a video of me saying, we only make boys. Of course it's a boy. And I'm just laughing. And he was just, he was so sweet. He was my smallest baby. And
smallest baby at your latest.
Yeah. Yep.
Latest.
Yeah. Out of all four, even. He was my latest gestation, smallest baby, which is super interesting.
So how big was he?
He was 7'3", so not tiny, but he felt smaller.
Yeah, I bet.
Like, he's so little. And he's our little Sullivan. His name's Sullivan. We call him Sully. And everyone was super excited. My Rory woke up from his nap and he was a little stunned and didn't really want anything to do with the baby for a little bit.
Was he about 2?
He was 2.5. Yeah. He came around by the next day or so, but it took him a minute. But yeah, and again, we just stayed in bed. I didn't move from that spot. I didn't change out of my robe. Like, we just stayed in bed. I believe it was with him, now they're all running together, that I needed, oh no, you know what? This was from Rory. I needed some extra time to get the placenta out Forgot to
Oh,
mention
okay.
that. And it was like getting to the 1 hour mark, and I had to like stand up and push that out. And so that was a little bit of drama there, but it
But
ended
not
up,
for your third.
but not for the third. That came out really quick. And everything was great. I didn't have extra bleeding or anything. And that castor oil really
Did the
did the
trick.
trick.
So she came over that morning and gave you the
Yes.
sweep, and you drank the drink. What time was that?
That was at like 8:30 or 9, I want to say.
And things were kind of like punitively moving along throughout the day.
Right.
What time did you lay down for that nap that you never took?
Yeah. So I laid down, gosh, I want to make sure I get this right. I think I laid down at 1, and he was born at 1:55 maybe.
Wow. So
It was
like
an
less
hour.
than an hour
was-
of
yeah.
like legitimate
Like
labor.
actual, like this is labor. Yeah. It was
Wow.
just 0 to 100 and like so intense. And it was definitely my most like out of control feeling in
Mhm.
labor. Like I was yelling, and there may have been some cursing, and
All is forgiven.
yeah. And it was chaotic. And like I said, she calmed me down for the pushing stage, but that
Yeah.
labor, I will just go ahead and say, like, I will not take castor oil again. I do not
After that?
recommend it. It was just like a roller coaster. It really was. I mean, it did the trick, which was
Right.
was
It
our
prevented
goal.
you from the Foley ball
Exactly,
42-week thing.
Right. So, it did what we needed it to do. But if I can avoid it at all in the future, I will. It was not very pleasant.
Maybe just call everyone over, sit them in your living room, and then take the castor oil right in front of them.
Right.
So everybody's there already.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So how do you feel like your relationship with Jesus was like in that like pregnancy, labor? I mean, did you even have time to think about Jesus in that labor? It was
I don't
probably a
think
little too
so.
fast.
Yeah, no, I don't think my worship playlist got put
Got
on.
put on at
like,
all.
Nothing. Yeah, I was just trying to get through that.
Yeah.
So I will say I don't really have much to say about that. But I will say that was smack in the middle of 2020.
Oh, yeah.
So that was August of 2020.
Yeah.
So all of that was really, I don't even know how to put it, but I just sort of had to really like surrender a lot of things and lean on him, just like I'm sure a lot of people did during that time. But, I mean, we backed away from our church for a little while just out of fear.
You mean like going to church?
Going to church, yes. Yeah, sorry.
Like physically. Like
Physically
just,
going, yeah, out of fear because
Was
I
it not
pregnant
closed?
and we didn't know. It was closed for a little while, but
And
then
then
they
they
opened back
opened.
up,
Okay.
and we were just kind of hesitant. And like thankfully I was having a home birth, and so not a lot of things were affected. I know people who are having hospital births, like so much of their plans had to change, and
Right.
their birth team had to change and things like that. But it still was just like so unexpected. And we didn't have the postpartum support that we had the second time because people just weren't
Because
comfortable
people weren't
coming
coming.
over.
Yeah.
We had, a couple people bring things, but it was
Porch
nothing
drop.
like, quick porch drops. It was just not the same. And so that was hard. My husband thankfully had a lot more time off work. I think he had 5 weeks that time. So that was really
Wow.
nice. And I think that actually went a long way for me. The transition was not bad, and I won't say that my postpartum was bad. It was very restful, and he was home, and it was great. But I think if he hadn't gotten that time off, it would have been really hard because I didn't have any other support outside of that. My mom came down, and my mother-in-law came, and all of that. But, my community and my friends,
Yeah.
it just was different, So
Well, then
then,
we know you had a fourth. So
yes. So
how did that go?
Let's see. Okay, so we had another surprise pregnancy with this baby.
Now, were you guys planning on having more children, or was this like surprise?
We were planning on it somewhere
Someday
down
in the future.
road in the future. Yes. And I was actually trying to do natural family planning.
Aha.
I learned that I need to brush up on that a little bit because
Need a little more practice.
Yes. So that was a huge surprise. I remember feeling like pretty nauseous one day, and we were just kind of having a lazy like weekend day or whatever. And I was like, why do I feel this way? This is so weird. And I'm like, well, I'll take a test, but I'm almost positive I'm not pregnant. And, lo and behold, 2 pink lines, and they were dark. They were dark pink lines. So I'm really not sure what happened with the
Well, if
dates
you were
there.
already nauseous, then.
I know. Yeah. It was interesting. Yeah. So
So how old was your youngest at that time?
let's see. At that time, he was about 15 months.
Okay. So a little over a year.
Yes. Yeah. So they are 23 months apart.
Our stories are so similar.
Really?
Lauren, this is so funny.
Oh,
It's
I
like you're
love it.
sharing all of these things, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that happened in my second. That happened in my
Oh my
third.
gosh, that's
third and
funny.
fourth are that close together.
I need to hear all your stories now.
You will. You will.
Okay, good. Yeah, so 15 months, I called my husband upstairs and I put the phone on the dresser and like filmed his reaction. And he just shook his head like, oh my gosh, here we go.
Here we go again.
And it's funny, I've watched that video back and my little, he's now 2.5 or a little older than that, looks so little. Like he was such a baby. And then we were having another baby. It was wild. We had already decided before that pregnancy that if we were to have another, we wanted to find out. And we wanted to find out the gender.
Okay.
And we had a few different reasons for that. My husband felt more bonded to the baby when he knew the gender because we had done that once before. And then I just needed some time to wrap my mind around the potential of 4 boys, if that's what we were going to have. And so we decided to find out really early and do the blood test, the at-home blood test.
Yeah.
We did it early. It was like 8 weeks, I think.
Oh.
It was like they send you a kit and you take the blood sample and you send it off, and then they send you like an email to tell you
Say if it's a
girl
boy or a girl.
Yeah. We were very impatient. So I found out at like 9 weeks that we were having a girl. And it was like such a shock. Like I didn't believe it my whole pregnancy. Like there was just no way. I couldn't wrap my head around it. But yeah, so we were having a girl and the whole family was excited, and all of my boys were so excited. So yeah, that pregnancy again, I was due in July, so it was a hot one. Very swollen. I had a young baby. It was a little bit of a harder pregnancy. I was more
you
nauseous.
didn't just have a young baby, you had 3 young
plus
kids.
Older kids, yeah. And my oldest he was 7 when she was born. So 6 and then 7. And yeah, it was just physically hard. My body was just tired. I was nauseous for probably 20, 22 weeks. I remember just feeling like so much pressure. Like it was just, and the more people I talk to, the more I realize like this is just what happens when you've had multiple pregnancies. So maybe you can attest to that. But I remember like sitting on the toilet and feeling like she's going to come out.
She's just going to fall out of me.
That's what it feels like. Like it's going to happen. So my midwife was probably rolling her eyes at me when I was like, are you sure she's not going to come out? Because I'm pretty sure she is.
And did you go with the same midwife again?
Yes, same midwife. We love her. And yeah, so all our prenatals were at home. The pregnancy, again, was pretty straightforward. Okay, so this pregnancy we had another low-lying placenta. We had the anatomy scan and found that out. And then at that point, I was just feeling called to kind of stop doing the co-care. We didn't want to have any more ultrasounds. We decided to forego the Group B strep test and the gestational diabetes, like all of those things. My midwife was monitoring some of those things, but we just felt it was just we didn't need it. It felt a little bit like overkill to us, and I know that's not what everyone is going to feel for their pregnancy, and it took me 4 pregnancies to get to this point, but it was just like a feeling that I had, like this was just not something we needed to do. So we stopped going to the birth center and just had our care with our midwife at home, and it was so great. I loved the simplicity of it, and she's amazing, and I would trust her. Obviously, I do trust her with my life and my baby's life, and So it was really sweet. And we did do, we did do a like 36-week ultrasound, actually. We were checking the placenta just to be sure. And then I wanted to make sure that it was a girl. And that was super, super fun. We got to see, I've never seen like a baby on an ultrasound that's that
far
old.
along. Yeah.
And so she looked like herself, and she had all this hair, and she was like sucking on her fingers and toes. And it was just like the sweetest thing ever. So that was really fun. Let's see, she came, we got past 40, got past 41. And again, like I just was feeling just so much peace during this pregnancy. Like, yes, I was ready to meet my baby, and I had some very emotional moments, but overall it was just like, I knew that she was going to come. There was, I don't know if it was because it was my 4th pregnancy or what it was, but I had this peace. And I wasn't going to rush it. I knew I didn't want to do castor oil. We had no reason to rush it. There was no timeline. And so we were just waiting. But I did have my midwife come. She came over at 41 and 3, I think, just to have like a chat with me, because I was starting to have some just emotional times where I'm like, am I going to be pregnant forever? And she just had this talk with me, and it gave me like the most peace. Like I slept so good that night. And I got to the point where mentally I was like, it's okay if she doesn't come for another week. Like it's going to be okay. And the funny thing is, I woke up the next morning, and that's the day she was born.
And that's when she came.
So if you can find that peace, and that is so much easier said than done, but if you can find that peace, and if you have a midwife or a care provider who can sit you down and just have a talk like that, like it was just a heart to heart, and just like, I promise this baby's gonna come. She just sort of like, I don't know, like breathed this peace into me or something. And I just think it was just so great. It was such a valuable, sweet moment. So if you can have that, if you can find that in your pregnancy, it will go a long way, and your baby might come the next day. But yeah, so with her, let's see. So I went to bed, had a great night's sleep, and I woke up, and I actually didn't look at the clock, so I'm not totally sure what time it was, but I remember I would sort of wake up, have like a really mild contraction, and then go back to sleep. And I don't know if I was sleeping for 5 minutes or for an hour, but I would wake back up for another one and then go back to sleep. And after a while, I decided to start timing it. So I got my little phone app out, and I was timing them, and I want to say they were like 7 or 8 minutes apart, but mild, like I'm just laying in bed kind of breathing through them.
Yeah.
But I decided to just go ahead and get up. No one else was awake. I was like, it might be nice to just be alone and just kind of labor a little bit. Well, in my head, I wasn't calling it labor. I was very much in denial. But so that was around 6:15, and I did text my midwife, just knowing how quickly Sully came. I was like, I'm just going to alert her.
Yeah.
So I said, they're coming around 7 minutes apart, but they're only like 20 seconds long. And she was like, okay, well, why don't you try and get in the bath and see what that does?
Yeah.
So I get in the bath, and I'm sort of like laying back in the bath. And they start to get to the point where I don't want to lay back. Like they're getting more intense, but they're still only like 20 seconds apart, which was kind of throwing me for a loop, because they need to be longer than that, generally speaking, to be effective. Right.
Yeah.
So, I start to kind of like sit up, and they are getting a little bit longer let's see. Sorry, I think I got that backwards. When I'm laying back, they're longer and stronger, but it's harder for me. So then when I sit up, they were getting shorter. Like it was just this weird pattern. It was like my body was trying to like figure it out. But then a little bit later, probably 30 minutes, 45 minutes later, my husband and my kids, I can hear them kind of like upstairs starting to get up. And they come downstairs, and a funny little tidbit, I had accidentally put the little like kids stool in our bathroom like in front of the door. Like I had scooted it over and then got in the tub, and my husband tries to get in, and he can't like open the door, and he's like, Lauren, you can't like lock yourself in the bathroom and have a baby. I'm like, I promise I didn't do it on purpose. but he somehow like finagled it and got it out of the way. And he came in, and everyone comes in and checks on me, and they're kind of realizing like, oh, like maybe this is labor, like things are happening. Our sister's coming, So everyone's excited. My husband's trying to get everybody fed breakfast and everything. So it's sort of like a chaotic time, but again, like so peaceful. Like I felt so peaceful. I had my music going. I was in the tub, which is exactly where I wanted to be. Well, not exactly. I had my pretty birth pool set up by the window.
You were in the bathtub.
I was
not
in
the birth
our
tub.
bathtub, yes. So that birth pool didn't get touched at all. But yeah, so I'm just laboring. I'm still just kind of breathing, like no vocalization or anything yet. My 2-year-old or almost 2-year-old comes in and he starts spitting out his crackers into the birth pool, into the bathtub where I'm laboring. And it's actually really funny because with my other pregnancies, or my other labors, I never really had my kids around me. And I always felt like it's better for them to just not, like, I thought I like wasn't that person. I wasn't that person who wanted their kids around during labor. Like I wanted to be that person. You see these beautiful birth photos, on Instagram or whatever. But I just felt like, it would make me anxious. It's just not what I want. But this time it's just sort of happened, and it was the sweetest thing ever. Like he's spitting his crackers into my birth pool, and I'm just like laughing. Like, it's fine. I was like, Vaughn, could you clean that up? And like, not a big deal. And then, they're just running around. I start to vocalize, like things are just clearly starting to progress. I'm still texting with my midwife and my birth photographer. And I start to vocalize, and again, my almost 2-year-old, he starts laughing at me because of the noises I'm making. Like he's like laughing at me, and like his joy it was literally relieving my pain. And I know that sounds like I don't even understand it, but it was like just his little giggles like just made me so happy that I felt better having him there. It was just like the sweetest moment. So yeah, so I keep laboring, I'm vocalizing, and then at one point I think my water broke, but I'm in the water, so I'm kind of like, okay, I think my water broke, but I'm not totally sure. So my husband texts the midwife and tells her that, and eventually I get to the point where I text her and I'm like, okay, I think you need to come, like it's time. And it probably was a little later, like she should have probably already been on the way, but I finally like give in to the fact that I'm in labor and it's happening. And thankfully she lived like less than 10 minutes away. So she got there pretty quickly. My birth photographer, however, did not make it. She lived further, but yeah, so I'm laboring, and let's see, my husband's in the kitchen, which is kind of like around the corner. My midwife gets there and she's just standing in the doorway. She knows how important photos and video are to me. So she sees the birth photographer's not there. So she gets her phone out, starts taking pictures right away, videos, and which was really sweet. I start to like feel my body bear down, and I feel like I was quiet during this. I actually have not consulted with my midwife or my husband about that, and maybe wasn't, but it felt, again, like the theme of this pregnancy was just peace. And it felt just really calm and peaceful. And I just kind of breathed her head out. And I look up and I say to my midwife, her head is out. Like just calmly, her head is out. And my midwife kind of yells to the other room to your husband, Vaughn.
Like, get in
she's
here.
Like, Vaughn, you need to come in here. And so he rushes in and he reaches down. Oh, and my 4-year-old also rushes in with him. So he's like right next to him watching. And he reaches down, he gets there just in time to help me catch her little body. So I'm sort of like on my knees, and we pull her up together, and her cord is like around her like belly. And he just sort of like, the midwife talked him through how to pull the cord off. And so he pulls it off, and then she's just on my chest, and that was it.
So what time was that? Because you said you got up at like 6:15?
Yeah, so she was born at 8 a.m. on the dot.
Wow.
So full labor was 2 hours just from like being asleep to baby, or less, a little bit less than, I guess.
And you got to sleep ahead of time.
Yeah, I got a full night's sleep.
That's
it was
amazing.
great. And it was just like, wake up and have a baby. And another sweet thing about it being so fast was we didn't have a chance to text or let anybody know. So no one except for my sister and my birth team knew that I was even in labor. And we decided to like keep it all to ourselves for several hours. We didn't let anybody, including our parents or anybody, know until like late afternoon that day. So that was like just this sweet little bubble that we were in. And just soaking her in. And my birth photographer did come and get like photos of her and us. And my boys cut the cord, which I didn't mention before, but my oldest has cut the cord at every birth for all of my home births. So that's a sweet little tradition. And so I was in the tub. She had some like old meconium that came out when she was born, but she was breathing fine. Everything was fine. Again, my placenta took a little while to come out. It was like 45 minutes or so. And so that was actually really painful. And I was like, really nauseous.
I hear if it doesn't come out in a timely fashion, it can be quite uncomfortable.
Yes, it was hard. It was really hard because you're holding your baby and you want to enjoy your baby, but you're in a lot of pain and feeling really nauseous. And so my husband had to take her because we decided to keep the cord intact. We wanted to wait until the placenta was born. And so he was like holding her and I had to like stand up and push it out. And so there was a little bit of like figuring that out, but we did it. And it came out, it was fine, all in one piece, like no issues there, no extra bleeding. I'm very thankful that I've never experienced like hemorrhaging or anything like that.
Right.
But yeah, and we moved into that guest bedroom where I had my other two, and we had our immediate postpartum there, newborn exam on the bed, all that good home birth stuff. It was really sweet. Let's see. No one was napping that time. All the
Everybody
kids
was
were
awake.
there. Yeah. And my 4-year-old got to see her be born, which was super awesome. And he loves that. Yeah. And I have these photos and videos that my midwife took. I'm very thankful for. And it was perfect. It was really sweet. It was fast, but it didn't feel overwhelming the way my third did with the castor oil.
Yeah.
So it was just, it was a totally different experience.
And what was her name?
Her name is Jolie, and we call her Jo or Joey. But yeah, Jolie, and her middle name's Vaughn, which is my husband's name. Yeah, we were just all smitten right from the first moment. My oldest went upstairs and like picked out a little bow for her, and we did the whole thing. And yeah, and they still are completely smitten with her. So she kind of runs the show over at our house. But yeah, and then that postpartum was by far my best that I've had. I felt really, really supported. I had sort of this newer community of all of these birth circle people that I've met through my midwife, and that was really sweet. I remember my first outing with her was taking her to our birth circle meeting.
Aww.
And she was a tiny little baby. I put her in the sling.
I'm pretty sure I was there for that.
I think you were, yeah. And I had my like house dress on, and I had the go ahead from my midwife that I could come, but I sat in my chair and told my birth story, and it was so sweet. And yeah, we had meals for like a month, and it was amazing. And I felt great. I didn't deal with any postpartum mood disorders or anything like that. And my husband had, I think he had 3, maybe it was 4 weeks off this time. It was great.
Still awesome.
And so we're figuring it out with 4 kids. We're learning how to do it. We're doing it.
So now you know probably what I'm going to ask next.
Yes.
For this 4th go round, what was your faith like?
Yeah, I would say I wavered with my 3rd, like I said, and I was definitely more on solid ground with this 4th one. I had my worship music going, and I felt his presence there a little bit more that time. And then postpartum, I feel like I leaned on him. I was prayerful through it, and that peace that I felt through my pregnancy and my birth and my postpartum without a doubt was from him. Yeah.
It's a gift of the Spirit. The Holy Spirit gave you his peace.
Oh, for sure. And it's hard to explain even the peace that I felt, like, just through, making decisions like choosing not to have, gestational diabetes tests and things like that I think a lot of people would be shocked by, but it was like I had this supernatural peace.
Yeah.
And I just knew I didn't need those things. And even through like a crazy labor that was really quick, I had my moments where I was like, I don't want to do this, but overall it felt just calm and just really sweet. So I'm just very thankful for that.
Well, thank you so much.
That was a marathon.
Thank you so much, though, for coming.
You're welcome.
And sharing all of that.
fun.
I love having a complete picture.
Yeah.
Is it complete?
I don't know. You'll have to stay tuned for that.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
How old is Jolie?
She is 10 months tomorrow.
Okay.
So she's coming up on her first birthday.
Well, stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll see. My husband might have a different answer for you, but
I'm sure he does.
we will see.
Thanks again for joining us today. Be sure not to miss an episode by hitting subscribe. Also, we'd love for you to leave a review of the show so that more people like you can hear more stories like these. If you're local to the Triad of North Carolina and seeking childbirth classes, birth consultations, or a birth doula, please click on the link in the show notes to take you to our website for more information. Just as a reminder, this show is not giving medical advice, so please continue to see your personal care provider as needs arise. Also, if you would like to be a guest on the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, please click the link in the episode show notes to get in touch with me. We hope you have a great week, and remember, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands.